Good afternoon to you. Mark South, HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Tuesday, May 15th, 2018. It is the hurricane outlook without the off-season part because it is the beginning of the Eastern Pacific hurricane season, and I do cover that area in terms of discussions, blog posts, and Twitter interactions. Really don't have the means to be able to go to Mexico for landfalls. Josh Morgerman, he does that, does a very good job of it, but he's taking himself some barometers and a camera or two, and I'm not dismissing that, I'm just saying it's a lot easier for him to get on a plane with a suitcase or two, maybe a duffel bag or something, and that's it. I would want to bring all of my equipment, and that becomes very costly, and there's probably some customs issues to deal with. It was hard enough getting it all to Bermuda in 2014. Anyhow, I do talk about Mexico, Central America. We want to make sure people are aware, and so I do cover that part of the world in these updates, but unfortunately not quite yet able to go in person, mainly because I'd want to bring all my stuff with me and measure everything and have more cameras, and you know how I operate. So anyway, we just want to make sure we're not ignoring that part of the world. All right, also do not want to ignore the anomalies map. This came out yesterday afternoon, updated on the 14th there. And this ring of cold relative to average is the talk of many people in terms of maybe having a down season in the Atlantic Basin. We also have this area of above normal water in the subtropics, whereas the main development region, it's trying to recover a little bit. This isn't completely hostile, but I'm seeing more people kind of talking about hedging their bets towards either a normal or even a below normal or below average season, both in the numbers of storms and hurricanes that form and the accumulated cyclone energy, the ACE output, etc., and so forth. We'll see. It's still early enough, and we know how things were last year, and certainly this part of the Atlantic Basin was much warmer. There's no question. But, you know, we don't have an El Nino out here. We do not have a warm INSO event. It's a little bit warmer than, I guess, I won't say last year because we were just starting to, it's probably about the same at this point because we were just starting to get this ripple through here of the La Nina. The bottom line, I still think even though it's worth trying, because you got to start somewhere, early season predictions are not that good. If you think about April and May forecasts from last year, they were nowhere near good at predicting what eventually happened, and nothing that anybody said would have predicted 2 to almost 3 Category 5 hurricanes within a very small area near the Northeast Caribbean Sea. With Irma, definitely a Cat 5. Jose may have been a Category 5 for a brief time, and Maria certainly was one as well. And the impacts from Harvey as a Category 4, and then the flood event. I don't care if you get the numbers of named storms and everything else exactly right. You can't pinpoint those impacts as well as we would like. Some people are close. Anyway, I'm getting on a tangent. Probably should get off. But we see this sea surface temperature pattern, and we say, maybe not as busy as last year. That may be true, but don't let that cause you to let your guard down. All right? Moving on, a wider perspective, you can see this sort of horseshoe of cold relative to average. Definitely a cold look to the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation. Just a fancy way of saying that the Atlantic overall is not as warm as normal, and especially through this region where we tend to see more hurricane activity when it is warmer than normal. But I also point out we do not have a warm equatorial Pacific. If anything, it's right around neutral conditions, and the slow migration towards eventual warming through the winter is probable, but I don't think enough time to really impact the Atlantic hurricane season. So let's move on. Eastern Pacific season, like I said, starts today. No activity expected. We don't have any yellow X's, nor do we have any orange X's or red X's. Those issued by the Hurricane Center out of Miami, Florida. Over here, they have the area of responsibility all the way out to about 140 degrees west longitude. Beyond that longitude line, it would be the Central Pacific Hurricane Center's area of responsibility, and that includes the Hawaiian Islands. All right? So you can get development out here. I mean, that'd be pretty remarkable, but they do sometimes go all the way out and affect Hawaii, but it's hard to do. Hawaii usually gets waves and some rain, but the Big Island tends to just eat hurricanes up, cuts them in half, literally. We saw that a few years ago. And there's even some talk this year that maybe the Central Pacific will be more active. And that's the point of this. We're going to stay on top of it pretty much on a daily basis. Not as long and rambling as today, but yeah, we're going to focus on this and make sure people know what's up, no matter where these things form and where they go. Because if they come to you, that's when it really matters, right? Right. All right, so looking at the visible satellite animation of the Eastern Pacific, strong upper-level winds, easy to pick out there. This is indicative of colder surface water and a stable atmosphere with all this stratocumulus. Some convection way down here well south of Mexico, but nothing organizing. Not really a favorable period overall in the Eastern Pacific. Things will probably start to pick up as we get into June, which climatologically is when we would expect it to. Out farther into, or further into the Pacific, there's Hawaii, and they have enough issues with Kilauea. You can just keep the tropical cyclones away. I'm sure that will suit them just fine. No issues out there, and you can really see the strong upper-level winds moving across, westerly upper-level winds there, and this plume coming up here for thousands of miles. The only area where it's really favorable at all in terms of light shear and any upward motion is the extreme southeast Pacific, but as I pointed out, nothing developing there. The list of names right here, 2018 for the East Pac. We start with Aletta, and we go all the way down to Zeke. Yes, they use all 21 letters of the alphabet in the Eastern Pacific Basin. In the Atlantic, we omit 5, right? Q, U, X, Y, and Z. Bet you didn't know that, or maybe you hadn't thought about it. In the East Pac, I guess there is enough variety in the names that could be chosen to represent the different nationalities, etc., that we have all 21. So we have, Xavier, Yolanda, Zeke to end things, and then you have John and Hector and Daniel, and we again start with Aletta. So there you go. Memorize those. There'll be a quiz later. All right, in the Atlantic Basin, this was the subject of a lot of talk for a couple of days, and rightfully so. Nevertheless, it's down to 10%. This is not going to develop further into anything of any significance. Very large sort of gyre, if you will, of low pressure kind of rotating around. This will bring moisture in from time to time to the southeast. A lot of areas could use that moisture, so that's not a bad thing, unless you like sitting on the beach and enjoying the beach. Then it is a bad thing. But the rainfall is needed, and we're getting into some drought conditions, so this is not necessarily bad news that this system's there. And the good thing is, again, come on, pop up. Well, that's annoying. I had an animation of the satellite, but look at that, it's being stubborn. There it is. There it goes. Wow, that's beautiful. All right, there it is. And this is a gaming laptop, too. Wow. Must be like a terabyte animation. Anyway, I'm glad it popped up, but where'd everything else go? It looks like it all disappeared. Let's see. Not going to give up. We'll go on. We'll move forward. There it is, rotating around, heavy bands of moisture trying to come on. Pretty good rain shield here in the southeast over Georgia and the Carolinas, at least interior portions. But you can see there's no definitive organization with this system, so I'm not too worried about it at all. Water temperature still in this part of the Gulf a little too cool to support anything, so no big deal. Now let's just get rid of this tab, if this will let me. And there we go, much better. I want to point out the lower 48 weather real quick. Severe thunderstorm and tornado watches for the Northeast. I talked about this yesterday. Severe weather event ongoing and going to get worse. This is the current radar. This pretty strong line of thunderstorms developing here, coming out of New York State through Pennsylvania, is going to be drifting, maybe even hauling the mail southeast, not so much drifting. And that's going to be a problem. This is going to have some wind damage, flooding rain, the possibility of tornadoes. So, we're talking big metropolitan areas here from southeast Massachusetts all the way down through the D.C. area, the I-95 corridor that we normally think of as blizzard country. Well, now you've got this straight line, massive thunderstorm complex developing, and it's still, not that late in the afternoon. This thing's going to continue to grow. So please be advised and plan accordingly. In the southeast, as I mentioned, some rainfall here. In Georgia and parts of the Carolinas, this will continue to persist on and off and hopefully put a dent in some of these drought conditions. And then further to the south, some rain along the middle part of Florida here, blob offshore. Overall, not a giant washout or anything, but enough so that it's worth mentioning, especially if you're traveling. Be careful out there. Slow down on the interstates, your highways and byways and whatever, because we want you around to be able to watch future versions of this, especially when everything goes 100% smoothly. I don't know why that GIF animation did that. That was annoying. We're going to fix that for next time, I promise. All right, that's all for today. I'll be back tomorrow, probably much more condensed version, just a quick look, and we'll sprinkle some variety into this. It's not always going to be satellite pictures. Yes, things are going to develop. No, they're not. Have a nice day. We'll kind of look ahead for MJO activity, spice things up, keep it interesting as much as we can until something pops up. And then you know how that goes. It gets interesting all by itself. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. Thanks for watching. I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll be back tomorrow.